Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to this week's episode of the Last Round Podcast, our typical review, preview, and news and analysis episode. We did an interview with special guest Robert Diaz earlier this week. So if you haven't listened to that interview, it's already posted on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audio Boom, X, formerly known as Twitter. So that was a great interview. It's a little over an hour. He talks about different stuff, his departure from Golden Boy, drawing power of David Benavidez and Jaime Munguia, what Canelo's plans might be, what he wants to see as a fan, what he expects to happen. Ryan Garcia was recently on a major podcast, talks about those comments, Golden Boy's Las Vegas office plan. So if you haven't listened, go check it out and take a listen. But for all you hardcore boxing heads, this is your regular, typical weekly show with news, previews, and reviews. So jumping right into it, this past Saturday, the 3rd of February, from the Wembley Arena in Wembley, London, Joshua Buatsi remains undefeated over 12 rounds with a unanimous decision win over Dan Aziz. This was for the British and Commonwealth light heavyweight title. Buatsi wins by scores of 117-109 twice and 116-110. What do you think about Buatsi's performance?
Good performance. I thought he kind of showed, obviously, the different levels there. I thought Aziz started a little bit slow because I actually did think that, Aziz had a good chance of maybe springing an upset, but I think all those years as just a sparring partner, he kind of came in, didn't really... I thought he was going to kind of try and ruffle some feathers as such, get in there, kind of start super fast, trying to get Buatsi out of the rhythm that he would try to dictate, but he didn't do that, which was kind of upsetting. And, as the scorecard showed, it was pretty one-sided. I didn't agree with the knockdowns, though, in the 11th. I thought the first one was definitely a slip. Second one, I could kind of see they can call it a knockdown, but I could kind of see if they decided to call it a slip on that, and that kind of put Aziz out of really going for some type of finish, putting the pressure on, and maybe the 11th or 12th, he was going to need a knockdown, if not a knockout, really to score. And you could see Buddy McGirt kind of saying that in the corner, kind of telling him hey, what are you doing? This isn't obviously what they kind of plan to do, I guess. Interesting, though, to see where Buatsi goes from here, because ever since he really turned pro, he's kind of been a little bit stale and turning down the Bivol fight and stuff like that, over the last few years, according to Eddie Hearn. So Bivol and Benavidez are obviously tied up. Probably going to be at least one, maybe two fights there. So, what does he do now? Does he just sit and wait for some British level fighters, which will probably be a good payday? Does he, try to stay on the world scene? Pick someone else, further down the rankings. Luckily for both of them, they've got enough people on the British scene, really, that would be, good fights and probably good paydays as well.
Do you think that Buatsi is just essentially waiting out Bivol or Beterbiev? I mean, obviously that's the plan, to fight for the undisputed title at light heavyweight for both of those two. And Buatsi might have to wait a little bit more of an extended amount of time to get the winner of that. But whoever wins between that fight, do they stay at 175? Do they retire? Because it's not like 175 and the next weight above, cruiserweight. It's not like, hey, you have to go up 4 pounds or 5 pounds, 7 pounds. No, it's 25-pound, well, essentially 25-pound difference. Some of them, there's a 190 or whatever it is. But it's a big jump. So you think Buatsi's just kind of waiting out to see, let's see if these guys vacate the titles. They either retire or they move up. and then those titles become all vacant, and then he can at least get one of them. Do you think he might be waiting for that?
He might be, because it seems to be that's what he does, maybe, like, in his career, because he seems to be very stale, and I know he's had like a couple of injuries here and there, some contract disputes, obviously, with Eddie Hearn. So maybe that's really, affected his career more than anything else. But, from what Eddie Hearn said and kind of insinuated in some interviews, he's turned down some big money fights. He's turned down some big name fights. So, he's not getting any younger like everyone else. So if I was him, I wouldn't want to wait around, activity. If I was him, try to stay active. And because you don't know, if you're thinking to yourself, oh, well, if Beterbiev wins, he's probably gonna drop the belts and, retire. What happens if he doesn't? How long did Amir Khan waste waiting for that Eddie Hearn fight, waiting for that Mayweather fight?
Exactly.
And the Pacquiao fight as well, probably. He
didn't get either of them. Yeah, and he didn't get either of them. But that's always going to keep happening. These fighters just waiting around for that one big payday with a big opponent. And like you said, Khan is a good example. Didn't get Pacquiao or Mayweather, arguably the two biggest, most profitable boxers of the last decade. I don't want to say arguably, I think they are. Moving on, also on that fight card, Adam Azim remains undefeated at 11-0 with a 5th round KO over Enoch Poulsen, who takes the first loss of his career. This was for the European super lightweight title. What do you think about this matchup?
If I was Adam Azim, I think he would probably kind of hoping for some more rounds. He hasn't had too many rounds, really, just because he's been that good and he's kind of been doing what he should be doing to some of these guys on this level. But it's one of those things, isn't it? It's exciting for us as fans, right? He gets in there, he gets people out of there, but then at the same time, sometimes he's probably thinking like, dude, I trained 6 to 8 weeks camp, did all that sparring just to get, 3, 4, 5 rounds in constantly. So good on one hand, but bad on another, I guess.
And also on the card, Caroline Dubois, 9-0, also undefeated over 10 rounds with the unanimous decision win over Miranda Reyes for the IBO lightweight title. Dubois, like we mentioned last week, is the sister of Daniel Dynamite Dubois, or is it Dynamite Daniel Dubois? I don't know where the nickname's placed, in the middle or at the beginning. What did you think about her performance?
I was hoping she was going to get her out of there, because it seemed like, Caroline had come onto the women's scene and, she was heavy-handed and everyone talked about, how much punch power she had and stuff like that. But to be fair to Miranda Reyes, she was pretty game. She had a good chin on her, but I would have liked to have seen, Caroline Dubois, get her out of there and try to be one of those women that, is getting knockdowns and is getting knockouts and stuff like that. I'm kind of repeating myself because I say this every time we talk about women's boxing, unfortunately. But that's what we need, because that's why we watch boxing, right? It's a gladiatorial sport. We want to see the knockouts. We want to see the knockdowns. We want to see blood and guts and stuff like that. One of the reasons we like watching someone like Wilder is he can be losing all 11 rounds, but then boom, just smokes him in the 12th. And unfortunately, in women's boxing right now, we don't get that. Nearly every single big fight goes the distance.
Rounding off the card, Ben Whitaker, also undefeated, gets a TKO over 5 rounds over Khalid Gradia. 10-14-5. What a record, huh? 10 wins, 14 losses, 5 draws. What a record that is. What do you think about Ben Whitaker's performance, and how far do you think he could go?
His performance is, some people love it, some people don't. It's exactly like, Prince Nazim Hamed back in the day, watching him in the UK. Some people loved him because he was so flamboyant and he was doing all these crazy things. But then you kind of like older generation, they didn't like it because he was kind of, teasing his opponents, kind of making his opponents look like rather silly. But, he was still getting the knockouts. And I think Ben Whitaker is, doing the same sorts of thing. And I think it was a Boxer or something posted today that from before the fight to after the fight, and Ben Whitaker, I think it was his Instagram maybe, attracted 100,000 new followers. So that kind of just goes to show, what type of reaction he's having to people, on social media. I'm a fan of him. I think he is sometimes a little bit too much, but at the end of the day, he's getting the knockouts. He's getting the traction that he probably is wanting. And at the end of the day, kind of like the Floyd Mayweather effect, right? It's like you either watch him because you love him and you want to win, or you watch him and you kind of hate him because of the flamboyant stuff that he does and you want him to lose, but you're both watching.
Yeah, he might have that X factor for that I guess Mayweather effect. That could happen. Also this past weekend from the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas, Nevada on DAZN, Conor Benn. This was a fight in the afternoon too, about 2:00 in the afternoon here in the United States. Like we talked about last week, mostly to do with having to obtain a large percentage of the UK audience, since Conor Benn is obviously English. He remains undefeated at 23-0 with the unanimous decision win over 12 rounds against Benn-Dobson, who takes the first loss of his career. Ben won by scores of 119, 109, and 118, 110 twice. CompuBox punch stats had Ben landing 44.6% of his total punches, 246 of 552, compared to Dobson's 28%, 146 of 505. What'd you think about Conor Benn's performance?
Wasn't the best. I think they probably picked Benn-Dobson because, he talked some trash, so they knew that would sell. Kind of flat-footed, plodding kind of style, which you think would have been kind of tailor-made for someone like Conor Benn. But yeah, he didn't manage to get him out of there. Is it due to not having that Canelo meat or something like that? I don't know. Maybe just, Benn-Dobson's got a good chin. But I think, especially with it being like his, unveiling in America as such, even though it was in the middle of the afternoon, I think, Matchroom and Eddie Hearn was probably hoping that, they could get Benn-Dobson out of there. They got the W, they got some good traction afterwards, like me and you were just talking about before we pressed record. Every man and his dog was calling him out. You've got Adrian Broner slipping into his DMs, talking about a fight. I'd be down for that, or watching Broner, maybe the Broner build-up now is better than the Broner fights, because obviously now Broner tends to throw about 5 punches around, unfortunately. But, the build-up is always fun when AB's around.
So like you touched on, a couple of people, Ben's been like public enemy number one for a lot of these. Devin Haney's dad, Bill Haney, was at the press conference being respectful of Conor Benn and his team, saying, they want the fight. Then Gervonta Davis and Conor Benn have been going back and forth on Twitter. And then Davis is seemingly open to making that fight with Conor Benn, which kind of gives credence to that. There was a report or some rumor that Gervonta Davis, his next fight might be in the UK. This kind of gives fuel to this rumor, right? I mean, it's just crazy that Conor Benn, and he fights at welterweight, and all of a sudden, one day to the next, he's getting all these guys to call him out and to want to share the ring with him. Devin Haney, Gervonta Davis, then Adrian Broner, which comes out of nowhere. He's pretty much in the driver's seat right now, and I'm sure Eddie Hearn's loving it. He's like, "Oh, this is great," And then Davis even. I think the funny thing is that Davis even posted a screenshot of a message that he got from Eddie Hearn, where I think Eddie Hearn messaged him on Instagram or something and said, like, "Are you really interested in this fight with Conor?" And then Davis posted his reply where he's like saying he was interested, or he responded some way where he showed interest. I just think it's funny that Showtime closed its doors in December, and all these PBC fighters are now like, "Oh, let me see where I can go. Let me see where I can fight." Even though PBC has a deal with Amazon, maybe something's going on back there where they don't like the offer that they're getting for that platform. Because before, when they were under the Showtime umbrella and Showtime was putting up a lot of the money, Davis was publicly like saying, "No, I don't care about Eddie Hearn," and posting messages how he's talking crap to him, and then saying like, "I don't need that guy, they need me." Well, what a difference some time makes. And when, your big television partner is out of the way, You know, it's a weird situation, but think about it like this: for Conor Benn, he would probably have to go to Amazon for the fight, right? Because Davis is the A side. But let me ask you this: who's really in the driver's seat? Who has the negotiation leverage right now with somebody like Tank Davis and PBC? Because coming off of a successful event with Ryan Garcia, you know, probably the most money that they both ever made, you know, high pay-per-view numbers, a lot of attention, mainstream attention. You can't go and fight, you know, somebody with no name. You kind of have to keep the momentum going, right? So for somebody like Tank Davis, at least, especially since he won, and when there were some rumors that he was going, his next fight would be in the UK. I was like, oh, okay, I could see that. You know, like UK doesn't get a lot of these American fighters, but they'll show up to watch him. Like, oh, this might be the only time we get to see Tank Davis out here. You know, it'd be a big event. It'd look good on his resume. Like, hey, look, he sells out all over the world, not just the United States. I get it. But now that he's publicly saying like, oh, let's make a fight with Conor Benn, and then he's responding to Eddie Hearn saying, let's make a deal or let's see what's going on. Who really has the leverage here? You know, what if Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn weighed out Tank Davis? You know, does Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn have the leverage to say, oh, okay, but we're making this fight on DAZN? You know, is Davis going to be like, okay, well, how much money are they putting up? As long as you beat Amazon, we'll fight on DAZN. What do you think? I think, kind of read between the lines a little bit here, the leverage might not be on PBC and Tank Davis's side right now for somebody like trying to make a fight with Conor Benn and all that.
It's not looking that way, right? With, you know, was it like December or something like that? Amazon kind of announced that PBC had come on board, and then that was it. We didn't hear anything for, you know, several weeks. Then obviously we've had the recent kind of release of, you know, the Thurman fight, but that's about it, really. There's not been too much, you know, released so far. So you do wonder, you know, do they not have that much money? Is everything going to be on like pay-per-view? It looks like Wilder's jumped ship, and obviously he was out in Saudi Arabia having a fight. There's rumors and some rumblings of some other fighters, you know, are looking to leave and go elsewhere. So yeah, you know, I think you could be right. I think, you know, maybe Eddie Hearn and DAZN, you know, have a good chance. And with, you know, Conor Benn's appeal, especially in the UK, I think, you know, someone like an Adrian Broner or you know, Gervonta Davis coming up to, you know, 147 or whatever they decide to do would be a good fight, and it'd be a good payday. It just obviously kind of all hinges on whether, you know, Conor Benn is able to get his British license, which, you know, in a recent interview, I know they were saying that the appeal is going to be in February. So, you know, so over the next coming weeks, I'm sure we'll find out. I'm sure everyone's going to be interviewing him on YouTube to find out what happens there. And, you know, he's with Conor Benn fighting in America this weekend. Maybe that's kind of just in case, you know, the fight does get made. You know, he's kind of, the American fans kind of know who he is, even though he fought in the middle of the afternoon. So then if he does fight Davis, they kind of like, okay, we kind of know who Conor Benn is. His dad also fought in Las Vegas. Or are they just going to go over to Saudi, you know, and have a slice of that Saudi money, which, you know, everyone's, you know, knows how good the paydays are over there, I guess. So it's interesting times, though. It's interesting times, you know, since they can't come to terms on that Chris Eubank Jr. fight.
Yeah, but that'll happen eventually. That'll happen eventually, but
you would think so, right? But you don't know, because Eubank and his dad are both kind of very peculiar guys, and if anyone's going to turn down a bucket full of money, it would be someone like them, you know, for a smaller payday, because they just seem to do odd things, I guess.
No, exactly. But going back to the Davis Conor Benn situation, I don't know. I just think it's so intriguing because, like, how much of a blow would it be to Amazon and PBC and Al Heyman, and just how much would it shake the boxing world if Tank Davis makes a fight with Conor Benn and the fight is on DAZN and there's no Amazon involved? Like, what is that? You're essentially your biggest star in your stable is his first fight after his most successful event is on another network, and it's not even the network you have a partnership. It's not even the network you just made the partnership with. Well, I mean, what's the likelihood that if this fight gets made between Tank Davis and Conor Benn, whether it's in the UK or it's in New York or Atlanta or something like that, Baltimore, what do you think is a percentage chance, if you just had to speculate, that this fight goes on DAZN or Amazon?
I think a good chance, going off what we've seen so far, or going off what we haven't seen so far, I guess. No real rumblings about anything. Davis kind of just posting, doesn't really seem to know where his next fight's coming from. I would say like a 60% chance it ends up on something like DAZN.
That's high. That's high.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit more than 50-50 at the minute, but we're just obviously speculating. We're not in the know over there, stuff like that. So interesting times, though. Interesting times with just the lack of, because normally it gets to the start of the year, right? And pretty much all of them will post, okay, here's the first 3 months, and they all try to outdo each other. Top Rank, PBC, Eddie, and Matchroom. So it's only really been Matchroom this year of kind of been like, okay, this is the first 3 months of our schedule. Boom. PBC, super quiet. Top Rank released, a few, but it's not like the normal, like where, PBC would sometimes come out with an amazing schedule over the last few years, didn't they? Unfortunately,
right.
Some of them were pay-per-view, but
well, I think that's what hurt them. Too many pay-per-views. And then also, PBC, looks like they hired Steven Espinoza, the former president of Showtime Sports, now that he's out of Showtime as well, as maybe the head of their production. He did say just recently during the press conference for Thurman and Zoo, which is scheduled to be the first event on Amazon at the end of March, I believe. Steven Espinoza did say that PBC is in charge of the production now. Well, before it was Showtime. Showtime was putting up the money. It was all their people, the production staff. That was them. But now it's switched. PBC has to hire all their own production staff. They're pretty much putting on the TV production, and Amazon is just lending their name. I mean, that's kind of what I got from it. That's a big deal. That's a huge deal. So like when people watch that first event, people are like, oh, Amazon doesn't know how to put on an event or something. Like, I mean, is it really them, or is it just Amazon who just slaps their sticker and their logo all over the place? And they're like, okay, we're trusting you to put on the production since you guys are the boxing people. That's a big deal, man. That just means they're just like, hey, we'll give you our name and we can stream it on our platform, but you guys have to put on the whole show. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, hiring all the production people. And I mean, think about it. They're probably going to get a lot of the same people from Showtime Boxing. Makes sense, right? All those people are out of a job, essentially. So you just say, hey, just come with us. We have a job coming in the next couple months. I mean, all those people will probably be like, oh, yeah, great. I still have employment. I'll just go with you and PBC and we'll be on Amazon. I get it. Just essentially copy and paste from the Showtime crew and put them on this new broadcast with PBC and Amazon. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see. And then Conor Benn, it looks like he's just the head of the table right now to see, what he's got a bunch of options. I mean, if you had to pick Gervonta Davis or Devin Haney for Conor Benn. But also Ryan Garcia's thrown in there too, because Ryan Garcia was maybe just his only option is Haney now, or whoever it is. What do you think?
If I was like Team Conor Benn, or?
Yeah. Would you want Haney or would you want Davis?
Maybe Dave. I don't know. Maybe Davis just due to the fact he's so much smaller, because when you saw Conor Benn weigh in on the morning of the fight, and when he posted that picture, he hydrated to 170 pounds.
Wow.
So fighting someone small in stature like, Davis, gives him a good chance. Fighting someone like Haney, bigger, more of a boxer. I'm not too sure if Conor Benn will do well against someone who moves. But the last person you said, I think Ryan Garcia fight, that'd be an interesting one. That'd be interesting.
Ryan Garcia, Conor Benn? I don't think that happens, though. I think that's the least option on the table. But the reason I threw Ryan Garcia in there is because, like, Ryan Garcia just been going back and forth saying, oh, I'm going to fight Haney. No, forget it. I've decided to fight Rolly. And now Rolly said in an interview at that press conference for Thurman Zoo, he's like, Al Heyman offered me more money to fight Cruz. That's why I went that way. That's what he said. It's exactly what he said. So it's like, okay, well, maybe he did. Maybe he did, or maybe, obviously we've heard reading between the lines of Heyman's, a lot of people are loyal to him. Maybe he convinced him. He's like, just stick with me. I'll take care of it. Like, even if you lose, I'm still going to get you paydays after or something like that.
Do some good pay-per-views, though, wouldn't it? Ryan Garcia, Conor Benn.
In the UK?
Just combined, I think.
That they would do a good pay-per-view?
Combined, yeah. If you did the US numbers and the UK numbers with...
Oh, yeah, if you combine them. But if you combine them, it'd be interesting. I don't think it would perform as good over here, but I think it would perform good in the UK. Ryan just doesn't have that quality on his own yet. Like, you always need that dance partner. I mean, we know that. Like, I mean, look at Canelo. Like, it takes a lot to get to that level to where, like, your name just sells on your own. But even then, like, you still need a viable dance partner who might be able to give you that extra comma and those payouts, or those pay-per-view numbers and all that. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see Conor Benn and see what he does. Devin Haney doesn't have a fight scheduled. Gervonta Davis doesn't have a fight scheduled. If he does the Davis fight, and it comes at his own, man, that's going to blow up boxing Twitter, man. That's going to blow up boxing Twitter. It's going to be huge. But we'll see. I mean, like you said, while they're going to Saudi Arabia, fighting on DAZN, you don't think... I mean, there's probably a good chance Wilder's been talking to other PBC people, like fighters, and saying, like, yeah, this is what I got over there. Like, what? That's what they paid you? He's like, yeah, that's why I went over there. And you never know. So... maybe Amazon and PBC, like, they're not offering the money that Showtime was offering. So, all these PBC guys are just like, nah, I'm going to look for other options. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting next couple months. Also on the card, Austin Ammo Williams remains undefeated at 16-0 with a 7th round KO over Amel Mumba Yasa, who takes the first loss of his career. So, Ammo Williams, you believe in him yet?
Still not convinced on him. I'd like to see him in there with someone that we know and that we rate, to be honest with you, because he's fought a lot of people, and I can't for the life of me I don't really know who they are. So, like, you can't really judge on how good he is because he's just kind of like putting away people that really should be. I know that, I think it was like maybe Sergio Mora, maybe, or whoever was on comms was talking about, like, he's world level and, maybe challenging for a title. And I was like, based on what? Really based on that performance against someone I've never heard of? Like, maybe just he's the home fighter, so he's just cheering on the home fighter, as they do. But it's really hard to tell. It's really, really hard to tell because he's fought a lot of people we're not really too sure. And I'd like to see him in there with, an up-and-coming name, or maybe someone like who's on the other side of the hill that's, retiring and coming down. But yeah, at the minute, no, I wouldn't want to see him in there for a world title fight because I don't think he's really had the seasoning.
Moving on to fight previews this upcoming Thursday, a Thursday fight here in the United States, the 8th of February from the Michelob Ultra Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada on ESPN Plus. Teofimo Lopez returns to the ring, 19-1, as he goes up against Jermaine Ortiz, 17-1 for the WBO super lightweight title at 140 pounds, I believe. Yes, 140. So the reason why this is on a Thursday you might be listening to this after this fight has already happened. So we're recording this before this fight has even occurred yet. But the reason it's happening on a Thursday here in the United States for our listeners internationally is because the Super Bowl event for American football is happening this weekend and in Las Vegas at their big American football stadium, which holds like 50,000 or a lot of people. So I think this is strategic. They're maybe Friday and Saturday the other venues are booked up for other events for Super Bowl because it's a huge event. So maybe they're trying to capitalize on the festivities for the whole week, and that's why it's happening. So let's see how it performs. But it is a different night for boxing. Do you think this is going to be a good fight? I mean, Ortiz has shown that he could fight. The thing with Teofimo Lopez is we never really know who we're going to get, right? Like when he turns it on and he's really dedicated and disciplined, he's one of the best fighters in the sport. Like you can see it. But sometimes he lets, when he goes on these highs and he's very happy and posting all this stuff, and which is great, but then it seems like he lets it get to his head a little bit, and then he doesn't train as hard. He thinks he's levels above, which essentially he might be based on his, the great performances he's put on against Lomachenko and Josh Taylor and all that. But, maybe he kind of gets lazy on the training aspect of it sometimes and doesn't train as hard. We were told that for a Lomachenko fight, he went all out, hired a nutritionist and strength. He had the whole team. But then when he fought Kambosos, he didn't have a nutritionist. He didn't have this and that, obviously saving money and stuff like that. But, once you kind of start training like that, when you're at the top of level, kind of have to keep it going, right? If you want to keep being the best fighter or one of the best fighters in the world. So that's the thing, man, with Teofimo Lopez. I don't know who we're going to get every single fight. I don't. What do you think?
No, you kind of hit the nail on the head right there. When Teofimo Lopez is on, he's on and he's one of the best guys to watch. He's one of the best fighters in the world. But like you said, he fought Lomachenko, great performance. He then fought Kambosos, kind of was obviously off the boil that night. And then, 2 fights later, he fights Sandor Martin. He wins by a very close split decision. A lot of people, kind of said that he might have lost that. And then, that's the famous clip of, Teofimo turning away and looking at someone and saying, have I still got it? Which was recorded, after the fight. And then he fights Josh Taylor. Great performance against Josh Taylor. And then here we are, obviously for this one against Ortiz. If he's on that night, I think, Teofimo Lopez probably wins and probably stops Ortiz. He's a great, prospect maybe. I don't know what you probably not. Can you call him a prospect? No, he's been undisputed champion, but he's still young. He's still got a lot of time left, to be honest with you. And, if they can keep him kind of grounded, if they can keep him hungry and, keep him in the gym and doing all that sort of stuff, I think he could, probably win a few more titles and probably mop up at, 140, I would imagine, and maybe move to 147. He's a great talent. It's just making sure that it's, watered properly, cared for properly and stuff like that. Because like you said, he just seems to have these, big ups and downs. And I don't know, maybe that's due to his, his personal life, maybe.
You think Haney's going to be in the crowd on Thursday? It is Vegas.
I'd imagine you'll probably get all of the local guys, right? Haney, Rolly might come out. All those guys obviously know each other, similar age, similar weight divisions and stuff like that. I would hope so anyway, for that WWE style, call outs and stuff like that, because it sells. It does sell.
Yeah. It's an interesting fight. Ortiz, has obviously been in some pretty good matchups. He fought Lomachenko,
retired Jamel Herring.
Retired Jamel Herring. That's right. So, like I said, it's just one of those, we don't know what Teofimo Lopez you're going to get. We don't know. So that's why, it's okay, well, I'll tune in, but I don't know who we're going to get. So, But also on the card, Keyshawn Davis, 9-0, goes up against Jose Pedraza. Pedraza back again, huh? You know, the rotation, going from PBC to Top Rank. He's that guy, huh? Just getting consistent paydays, but it works for him. Pedraza is 29-5-1. What do you think about this fight?
It could be an interesting fight to see, Keyshawn Davis in there with someone of the ability, of the resume of someone like Jose Pedraza. But if Keyshawn Davis is what we all think he is, I think he'll probably beat Pedraza, maybe even stop him, late on. Pedraza's kind of been in there with everybody, right? Like Arnold Barboza, Richard Comey, Jose Ramirez, Jose Zepeda, Lomachenko, Ray Beltran, Gervonta Davis, Stephen Smith. He's been in a who's who of, names over the years. So unfortunately, Pedraza's now coming down the hill, whereas, Davis is still, pretty much climbing it. And from what we've all seen, if he can keep himself grounded and not get suspended for smoking weed, I think he'll become a world champion.
You think so?
I mean, unless something untoward happens, he just goes off the rails. He's got all the skill in the world. He looks unbelievable. His amateur career is really good. In the pros, he's really good. Hangs around with, obviously, like Shakur Stevenson, Terence Crawford, does sparring and stuff with them. And those are two generational talents. So I think the only person that could really stop Keyshawn Davis is Keyshawn Davis.
Yeah, I can see that. Also, this upcoming Saturday, the 10th of February, from the Copper Box Arena in Middlesex, Hamza Shiraz, 18-0, goes up against Liam Williams, 25-4-1 for the WBC Silver and Commonwealth Middleweight titles. What do you think about this matchup?
Good matchup. Rearranged due to injury, got delayed a couple of months. Now here we are. It's kind of similar sort of thing where Liam Williams, been in the big fights, probably coming down the hill, just kind of like similar to what we were just talking about with Pedraza, really. Hamza Shiraz coming up the hill, good prospect. Big, tall. Liam Williams is kind of like a little bit shorter, more compact, super strong. So it's going to be an interesting fight, really interesting stylistic matchup. Is Shiraz just going to keep him at length because he's tall, very rangy, but also powerful? Interesting fight, because it's also like, how much does Williams have left? Does he still think that he's going to have another run at the title, or is he just looking for a few paydays, on his way out of on his way out of his career? So interesting matchup. I'll probably go with, the up and coming guy. I think I would go for Shiraz, and I think he maybe beats him down and stops him late.
And also on the card, Anthony Yarde, 24-3, goes up against Marko Nikolic. What do you think about this matchup? Nikolic is 32-3.
Should be just a run out for Anthony Yarde. Kind of clever, right? We just spoke about some, light heavyweights in, Buatsi, Dan Aziz. So the week after they fight, to get your name out there, get yourself into the win column, I think it's a very clever, kind of keep your name in the mix. If he gets in there and, just destroys Nikolic, knocks him out quite early, then obviously you've got like, oh, Buatsi just won. Oh, Yarde just won. Yarde just won by a first round KO. Very clever. I think keep yourself in your name in the mix. So it'll be good domestic fights all around. Like I said before, Aziz, Buatsi, Callum Smith, Anthony Yarde. Yeah, for me, it's you'd hope that everyone just kind of sees sense and just fight each other. It looks like the world titles are going to be held up for a little while with Bivol and Better BF, especially if there is a 2 fights in the contract. So just fight each other. It's going to be big paydays. It's going to make headlines.
And then news and notes section of this week's episode of the Last Round podcast. Rest in peace to Carl Weathers, a former NFL linebacker who became a Hollywood action movie star and comedy star, most famous and very known to not just boxing fans, but to sports fans for his role as Apollo Creed in the Rocky movies with Sylvester Stallone. And then also facing off against Arnold Schwarzenegger in Predator. And then he was also in the Happy Gilmore movie with Adam Sandler. He passed away earlier this month, or last week, I believe. He was 76 years old. His manager had said that He died peacefully in his sleep. As of right now, we don't know the cause of death. But obviously he made a big impact, not just being in the NFL, which is already an accomplishment in and of itself, but once he hit that Rocky franchise and became a part of that legacy with Sylvester Stallone, that was huge. So everybody remembers Apollo Creed, Rocky. That was a big cultural moment, not just in the United States, but the world. So rest in peace to Carl Weathers. And then also the Tyson Fury Alexander Usyk fight. I'm sure by now, if you guys are listening, has been rescheduled. Tyson Fury got a cut in sparring, according to his camp and pictures and videos he's posted. So the new bout has been rescheduled for May 18th in Saudi Arabia. So that's according to Turkey Al-Sheikh. I think I said that right. He's the head of the Saudi Arabia's Kingdom General Entertainment Authority. What a mouthful that is. So this was announced on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani. They went on there, and Usyk and then Igis Klimas, his manager, were on there. They were set to meet February 17th, which is, I believe, was supposed to be next weekend in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. But as I mentioned, Fury suffered a cut over his right eye while sparring. Some people are still criticizing him because of his past, behavior and everything he says and personality. So, I mean, should we believe him, or what's going on here? Is this a real cut? Should we question it?
They love the conspiracy theories, right? With the amount of money on board and that close to the fight, I'd like to think that obviously, Fury and the video that came out as well, even though it looked like it was filmed on a potato, it was that bad quality, especially in 2024. But no, I mean, you're just going to have to go with it, right? Obviously, you've seen the cut, the stitches and stuff like that. The fight's being rearranged, and then there's also a 10 million pullout fee, which according to Turk.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, when I watched the interview on Ariel Helwani, it's actually from their pocket. It's actually from, if Tyson pulls out, Tyson has to pay Usyk out of his own pocket.
That's insane.
And vice versa. Obviously, if Usyk pulls out, then he has to pay Tyson, 10 million out of his own pocket to stop, that happening. So fingers crossed, it's just a little delay, and then obviously we get the undisputed fight in May. I thought it would be delayed longer, to be honest with you.
I know, it's pretty quick. Well, you got to think about it. When Saudi Arabia's head man in charge and their government's in charge and putting up the check, they're like, no, you guys have to come back now. Like, I'm sure they had a lot of pull here. So, because you're right, like, I think people thought like, oh, it's going to be like August, September, or something like that. No, I'm sure the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was like, no, you're coming back like as fast as you can. So, Big Brother's watching. And then speaking of undisputed matchups, the long-awaited fight between Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev for the undisputed light heavyweight championship of the world is set for June 1st, once again in Saudi Arabia. This was also announced on the MMA Hour. So Ariel Helwani getting all the scoops over there. Beterbiev, as we know, holds the WBO, WBC, and IBF world titles at 175 pounds and is ESPN's, however much stock you want to put into their rankings, is their number one ranked light heavyweight in the world, and their number 7 pound for pound boxer. Like I said, however much stock you want to put into their rankings. And then Bivol has the WBA world light heavyweight title, and probably his most prominent win is against Canelo Alvarez. Bivol is 22-0 with 11 KOs and is ESPN's number 2 ranked light heavyweight and number 4 on the pound for pound list. Like I said, however much stock you want to put onto ESPN's rankings. So we're getting the fight. Saudi Arabia, whether you like it or hate it, we're getting the fights. We just have to watch them a little bit earlier. It's not a nighttime thing usually, but they're there. They're there, and it's working. And then also recently, what just happened this week, the WBO, one of the major sanctioning bodies, announced a new rule. that they have for drug testing and finding fighters with, substances in their systems. They put out a statement saying, please be advised that in the event any WBO champion, male or female, tests positive for any banned substances, it is not necessary that the WBO demonstrate intent, fault, negligence, or knowing use on the fighter's part, considering that it is the fighter's duty to ensure that no prohibited substances enter his or her body. Fighters are fully responsible for any prohibited substances found to be present in their body. What's your reaction to that? They're pretty much saying they don't care what your intent was. If it's in your body, we're not for it. We're going to discipline you or whatever.
That's how it should have been the entire time. It's just the WBC seem to have taken it upon themselves, even though they're not a drug testing agency. They seem to just always involve themselves in everything and to be like, well, we think Conor Benn was down to eating eggs, and, Oscar Valdez when he tested positive, and, this, that, and the other. That's how it should be. It's always been that way, in my opinion. That's how it should be. Like you've taken it, and then obviously, unfortunately, you're going to have to, suffer a ban unless you can turn around and say like, hey, this was in this supplement. Test the batch or something like that, because there's so many clean fighters that probably go to all these lengths of testing things and making sure they eat the right things in the right places at the right time and all that sort of stuff. And there's other people that are just blatantly freaking cheating. And how what sort of chance do you have when you've got someone that's obviously juicing, doing this and that, and they can train longer, train harder, they're faster, stronger than you are, and you're trying to do it all naturally. So unfortunately, at the minute, the cheaters are prospering, because how many times have the WBC and other places, someone's tested positive, but they create so much money in the boxing sphere that they either get a very short ban or no ban at all.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to keep an eye on, observe how this plays out, because we know a lot of these sanctioning bodies have closer associations with certain promoters than others. WBO has traditionally had a close relationship with Top Rank. So if it's a big Top Rank prominent star, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens, how WBO addresses it. I'm sure Top Rank might be coming to them and like, hey, let's try to work this out, That's going to be interesting to see. But let's see if they stick to their guns.
But how much testing does Top Rank do?
That's true. Yeah.
How many off the top of your head, a Top Rank fighter that's tested positive?
Right. That's true. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
That's the thing about, with everyone getting at Matchroom. Matchroom tests positive a lot because they test a lot.
Yeah. From what we know of, Top Rank, somebody from Top Rank is listening. They probably test a lot, and we just don't know. It's just not publicized. But you're right. That's what we're speculating, I guess, But that'd be an interesting conversation. We should get somebody from Top Rank on here and talk about that stuff. That'd be very, very interesting. Once again, guys, thank you guys for listening to this week's episode of the Last Round Podcast. Make sure to go and follow us on Spotify. Hit that follow button on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Subscribe. It helps the algorithm for the show and helps us get more guests, helps us the show grow in bigger fashion. So if you just hit that follow button on Spotify or subscribe button on Apple Podcast or any app that you listen to us on, it definitely helps the algorithm recognize us and put us in more prominent spots to get bigger guests and more content for you here in the Last Round Podcast. But before we completely sign off, Mike, go ahead and let them know where they can find us and follow us.
Is that like give out my address for Valentine's Day cards, Dan? Is that what you mean?
You can do whatever you want.
We are at the Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter, and be sure to join us next week. We've got O'Shaki Foster defending his WBC super featherweight title against Abraham Nova. Next week, it's all Friday night fights.
All Friday night fights. That's interesting. So for once again, my co-host Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. Happy Valentine's Day to you. This is the last round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is the Last Round Podcast.